You've been lied to your entire life. They told you first impressions take 7 seconds. Researchers at Harvard disagree. Your brain forms a complete, locked-in judgment about another human being in 39 milliseconds. That's half the time of a blink. And here's the part that should terrify you. Once that judgment is formed, your brain will spend the rest of the conversation defending it, not questioning it. It will find reasons to confirm what it already decided before you said a single word. So the real question isn't how do I make a good first impression? The real question is who designed the impression you're making right now? Because if you haven't deliberately designed it, somebody else has decided for you, and they decided in 39 milliseconds. My name is John, and today we are going into deep territory. We're talking about Machiavellian psychology, the neuroscience of perception, a man in the 1800s who conquered the most powerful social circles in England using nothing but a perfectly tied cravat, and exactly how you can engineer the way the world sees you, starting today. Let's go. Segment 1. The biology of the first impression, the 39 millisecond rule. Let's start with the science, because I want you to understand, this is not about style. This is about biology. In 2006, researchers at Princeton University ran a fascinating experiment. They showed people photographs of strangers for just 1/10 of a second, just a flash. And then they asked those people to rate the strangers on traits like competence, trustworthiness, and leadership potential. The results were extraordinary. Even at 1/10 of a second, far less time than it takes to consciously register what you're seeing, people's ratings were consistent, repeatable, and matched the ratings of people who had studied the same faces for a full minute. The brain doesn't need time. It makes its judgment instantly, and then it protects that judgment. Harvard psychologist Nalini Ambady took this further. She filmed teachers for just 6 seconds, silent, no audio, and had strangers rate their effectiveness. Those 6-second silent clips predicted end-of-semester student evaluations after 300 hours of actual classroom time with startling accuracy. Think about what that means. A stranger who watched 6 seconds of footage knew roughly how good a teacher was before the teacher had spoken a single word or taught a single lesson. This is what researchers call thin slicing. The brain is not waiting for data. It is pattern matching at an unconscious speed, using the only information available before conversation begins, which is visual information. Your posture, your grooming, the fit of your clothes, the cleanliness of your hands, the way you carry your body into a room. And once that snap judgment is formed, a mechanism kicks in that psychologists call confirmation processing. Your brain essentially becomes a defense attorney for its own first impression. It will find evidence to support what it already believes, and it will quietly dismiss or ignore evidence that contradicts it. If you walked in looking polished and in control, the room will forgive your stumbles. They'll interpret your mistakes as endearing, as proof that even brilliant people are human. But if you walked in looking like you rolled out of bed and can't be bothered, the room will doubt even your best ideas. They'll interpret your competence as a fluke. And the worst part is, they won't know they're doing it. This is why just be yourself fails so completely as a strategy. Your authentic self doesn't get processed by the logical brain. It gets processed by 39 milliseconds of pure unconscious visual pattern recognition. You are not fighting someone's opinion, you are fighting their biology. Segment 2. The Machiavellian Principle, the Engineering of Visual Power. Niccolo Machiavelli wrote The Prince in 1513. Most people think of it as a cynical guide to political manipulation. And it is, but buried inside it is one of the most psychologically accurate observations ever written about human nature. He wrote, "Men in general judge more by the eyes than by the hands, because it belongs to everybody to see you, to few to come in touch with you." Read that again slowly. He's not making a moral argument, he's describing reality. Most people who will ever form an opinion about you will never see your work, never hear you think, never witness your competence. They will only see you, and they will judge you based entirely on what their eyes tell them in the first moments of contact. Machiavelli's insight was this: appearance is not an add-on to your power. Appearance generates the experience of power, first in the observer, then in the room, and eventually in reality itself. The look doesn't reflect the power. The look creates the feeling of power, and that feeling becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Here is the trap most men fall into. They believe that basic hygiene and a clean shirt is enough. They think, as long as I don't look bad, I'm fine. But there is an enormous gulf between looking not bad and looking like someone who belongs at the top. Not looking bad prevents a negative first impression. It does not generate a positive one. It makes you invisible, neutral, forgettable, and in any competitive environment, a job interview, a first date, a client meeting, a negotiation, invisible is another word for losing. Machiavelli's prescription wasn't "look okay." It was "treat your visual presentation as a weapon and engineer it with precision. Every detail communicates something. The question is whether you're controlling that communication or letting it happen by accident." Segment 3. Beau Brummell. A lesson from history. George Brian Brummell was born in 1778 to a middle-class family in London. His father was a civil servant. He had no aristocratic blood, no inherited wealth, and no particular genius for politics or business. By every conventional metric, he should have been a nobody. He was a nobody. And then he became the most powerful social figure in Regency England. His nickname was Beau, meaning beautiful or elegant, and by the time he reached his 30s, the Prince Regent himself, the future King George IV, was waiting for Brummell's approval before appearing in public. Noblemen changed their clothes based on his feedback. Invitations to the most exclusive events in London depended on whether Beau Brummell considered you acceptable. He had no army, he had no money, he had no office. He had only one weapon, and he used it with absolute obsessive precision. Brummell spent 2 hours every single morning getting dressed, not because he was vain in the lazy sense, because he understood before there was a word for it that his visual presentation was a calculated argument. Every element of his appearance was designed to do a specific cognitive job. The pristine white cravat tied with mathematical exactness, the perfectly fitted tailcoat, built to follow the lines of his body without a single wrinkle. The gleaming boots reportedly shined with champagne. Nothing was accidental, nothing was optional. Every detail was deliberate, and the cumulative effect was overwhelming. When Beau Brummell walked into a room, the room submitted, not because he demanded it, because the sheer precision and control reflected in his appearance triggered an automatic psychological response in every brain present. The human brain, when it encounters someone who appears to have achieved absolute control over their physical presentation, assumes that level of control extends to everything else in that person's life. Brummell looked like a man who was completely on top of the world, and so the world treated him as if he were. Researchers call this the contagion of mastery. When you stand next to someone whose presentation reflects total self-discipline, your brain translates visible control into assumed general competence. You don't think about it, you just feel it, and that feeling drives real-world behavior. Deference, trust, opportunity, respect. Segment 4. The halo effect and the horn effect. In 1972, social psychologist Richard Nisbett ran a landmark study on what he called the halo effect. Participants watched videos of a teacher and rated his personality and competence. In one version, the teacher was warm and friendly. In another version, the same teacher was cold and distant. The participants who saw the warm version rated him as more attractive, more physically appealing, and with a better accent, even though none of those things had changed. The brain, once it has a positive global impression, automatically upgrades everything else about you. For appearance specifically, decades of research have confirmed that people who are attractive and well-groomed are subconsciously judged as smarter, more honest, more successful, and more morally upright than equally qualified but less polished counterparts. There is no logical connection between having a clean haircut and being a trustworthy person. But your brain doesn't care about logic. It is running an evolutionary shortcut. In ancestral environments, physical investment in one's own presentation correlated with things like health, conscientiousness, and social standing. The bias is ancient, the bias is real, and the bias is running in every room you enter. The reverse is also true, and this is where it gets brutal. The horn effect, the opposite of the halo, means that when someone registers a negative first impression of you, everything else gets downgraded. Your ideas are received with more skepticism. Your mistakes are judged more harshly. Your achievements are attributed to luck. And here's the cruel part. In a world that claims to judge people on merit, the person who is losing this game is usually the last to know it. They think people don't like their ideas. In reality, people didn't like what they saw before the ideas were even presented. Think of it this way. Your intelligence and your skills are weapons, but they're inside a vault, and your appearance is the door to that vault. If the door is rusted, unwelcoming, and looks like it belongs to an abandoned building, nobody is going to walk through it to discover what's inside. They will simply walk past, and your vault, full of everything you've worked to build, sits untouched. You are either collecting the dividends of your appearance or paying the tax of your negligence. There is no third option. Every interview, every meeting, every negotiation, every first date, you are either winning the cognitive game before you speak, or you are fighting uphill from the moment you walk in. Segment 5. The Economics of Appearance. Somatic Capital. Let's talk money, because if the psychology doesn't fully convince you, maybe the numbers will. Economist Daniel Hammermesh spent his career studying what he called the beauty premium, the measurable economic advantage that accrues to people who are physically attractive and well-groomed. His research, published in his book Beauty Pays, found that people in the top third of attractiveness and grooming earn approximately 12% more over their lifetime than people in the bottom third, not because they're smarter, not because they work harder, because the world responds to them differently. But it goes further than wages. Attractive people receive lighter sentences in courtrooms, even controlling for the severity of the crime. They receive better loan terms from banks. They are more likely to be promoted into leadership positions. They are trusted more quickly in negotiations. And in sales environments, they close more deals at higher margins. Now here is the Machiavellian response to this information. You can get angry about it. You can call it unfair. And you'd be right. It is unfair. But being right about the unfairness of the system doesn't change the system. The bias is not a social construct that's going away anytime soon. It is 300 million years of biological hardware. Every organism with a nervous system runs some version of this code, making rapid visual assessments about other organisms it encounters. Being angry at the halo effect is like being angry at gravity. It doesn't stop you from falling. Machiavelli's answer was different. Instead of lamenting the rules, master them. Your appearance is what researchers call somatic capital. The value stored in your physical presentation, posture, grooming, and style. It is a financial asset, as real as your education or your professional network. And unlike most assets, somatic capital starts paying dividends in the first 39 milliseconds of every interaction. You can start investing in it today, and the returns are immediate. Segment 6. The Unwritten Social Contract. Sociologist Irving Goffman spent his career studying what he called the presentation of self in everyday life. His thesis was this: every social interaction is a performance, and in every performance the audience is watching two channels simultaneously. The first channel is what you say, your words, your arguments, your stated intentions. The second channel is what you emit, your appearance, your posture, your grooming, your non-verbal signals. Here is what makes this insight so powerful and so uncomfortable. The audience trusts the second channel far more than the first, because they understand, consciously or unconsciously, that words are cheap. Anyone can say they're competent, reliable, trustworthy, successful. Words are the easiest thing in the world to fake. But your appearance, your posture, the state of your physical presentation, these are signals that take consistent investment to produce. They're much harder to fake over time. So the brain treats them as more reliable data. When your appearance is sharp, disciplined, and deliberate, the people around you receive a subconscious message. This person invests in themselves. This person is consistent. This person can be trusted with important things. When your appearance is neglected, the message that lands regardless of your words is this: this person doesn't manage themselves well. Why would I trust them to manage anything else? And here's the part that stings the most. Neglecting your appearance sends a message not just about your competence, but about your respect for the people you're meeting. When you show up unprepared in appearance to an important meeting, to a date, to a social event, the other person's brain registers it as you didn't think they were worth the effort. You didn't care enough to prepare. Whether that's your intention or not is completely irrelevant. Intention lives in your head. Perception lives in theirs. And perception is the only thing that drives behavior in the real world. Segment 7. The Obsession Standard. What to actually do. The obsession standard isn't a dress code. It's a philosophy of precision. It means treating your physical presentation as a domain where carelessness is not acceptable, because every detail is communicating something, whether you intend it to or not. Your job is to decide what every detail says. Let's start with posture, because it's the most overlooked and the most immediately impactful. Your posture is the first thing people see before they register your clothes, your face, or your expression. A man who enters a room with his shoulders forward, his chest collapsed, and his eyes down is broadcasting fear. The brain reads this as submission, as someone who doesn't fully believe they have the right to be in this room. Conversely, a man who enters with his spine long, his shoulders back, his chin level, and his eyes forward, is broadcasting something completely different. He is signaling that he is not the prey in this room. He might be the predator. Open posture doesn't just communicate confidence to others. It signals to your own brain that you are safe and in control. Research by Amy Cuddy at Harvard has shown that holding expansive postures affects your own hormonal profile, increasing testosterone and decreasing cortisol. Next, grooming. And I mean the kind of grooming that most men think doesn't really matter. Your nails, the state of your skin, your hair. Not just whether it's cut, but whether it's clean, styled with intent, and appropriate for the context you're in. Here's the psychological reality. Grooming signals conscientiousness. When someone looks at a person with clean, trimmed nails and a well-maintained haircut, the brain automatically constructs a narrative. This is someone who pays attention to details. This is someone who follows through. This is someone I can trust with significant responsibilities. Conversely, small grooming failures, a missed button, untrimmed nails, a wrinkled collar, plant a small doubt in the observer's brain. And small doubts, accumulated, become large reservations. Now let's talk about clothing, because this is where most men get it wrong in a very specific way. They think expensive is the goal. It isn't. Fit is the goal. A moderately priced outfit that fits your body perfectly, that follows your actual shape, that doesn't hang or bunch or pull, is neurologically superior to an expensive outfit that fits poorly. Because a bad fit signals something specific and damaging. This person has resources, but they lack self-awareness. They don't know how they look to others. And if they can't manage that basic self-knowledge, what else are they missing? A perfect fit says, this person knows exactly what they are. They pay attention. They've taken the time to understand how they present to the world and to optimize it. That's a remarkably powerful signal. It suggests competence, self-awareness, and investment, all from the cut of a jacket. The obsession standard means running a daily audit. Before you walk out the door into any situation that matters, you ask yourself, what is every visible detail of my appearance communicating right now? And then you make deliberate corrections, not because you're vain, but because you understand that your appearance is a language and you've decided to be fluent in it. Segment 8. The Collapse of Brummell. Appearance as Force Multiplier. Now I want to come back to Beau Brummell because his story doesn't end in triumph. And the reason it doesn't is the most important lesson in this entire video. By his 40s, everything had collapsed. He had gambling debts he couldn't pay. His social capital, which had always been fragile because it was built on image alone, evaporated the moment he could no longer maintain the visual perfection that had earned it. He fled to France to escape his creditors. He died in an asylum in 1840, penniless, isolated, and mentally deteriorated. The man who had made princes wait for his opinion spent his final years begging for charity. What went wrong? He had mastered the weapon, but he had no substance behind it. Appearance, as Machiavelli understood, is an accelerator. It is a force multiplier. It takes what you already are, your skills, your intelligence, your work ethic, your character, and amplifies the world's response to it. It opens doors that would otherwise be closed. It buys you time and credibility in rooms where you'd otherwise be dismissed. It lets your real work reach people who would never have given it a chance without the opening created by your presentation. But it is not a substitute for the work. Appearance without substance is a lever without a fulcrum. It looks impressive until the moment real weight is applied, and then it collapses entirely. Brummell had the gasoline. He never built the fire. The synthesis is this. Your appearance is a door. It is the most important door in any interaction because it is the door that opens first before any other judgment can be made. But what matters, what actually builds a life, is what's on the other side of that door. Your intelligence, your skills, your discipline, your values, your capacity to deliver. Appearance without competence is theater. Competence without appearance is a vault nobody opens. You need both. The world does not respond to your abstract, invisible qualities. It responds to what it perceives, and it perceives your appearance before it perceives anything else. This is not unfair. This is not something to be angry about. This is simply the operating system, and the Machiavellian move, the intelligent, ruthless, practical move, is to master it. In every room you enter for the rest of your life, you will be judged before you speak. The only question is whether that judgment was designed by you or left to chance. You just walked through 700 years of psychology, economics and history, all pointing to the same conclusion: the world is not fair. Biology doesn't care about fairness. And the men who understand this and do something about it will always have an advantage over the men who are waiting for the world to start judging them on merit alone. Now, one thing we didn't fully explore today is the body language side of this equation, because grooming and clothes are only part of the signal. How you move through a room where you direct your attention, how you use silence, how you hold eye contact, that's a separate language, and it's one that most people are completely illiterate in. If that interests you, I've got a video right here that goes deep on exactly that. I'll see you there.